My name is Ann Wright. I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel. I was 29 years in the U.S. military, was also a U.S. diplomat for 16 years and served in U.S. embassies in Nicaragua, Grenada, Somalia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Sierra Leone, Micronesia. I helped reopen the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan in December of 2001 and stayed there for 5 months. And then Mongolia was my last assignment. The last 4 assignments were as Deputy Ambassador or Deputy Chief of Mission. But in March of 2003, I ended up resigning from the U.S. government in opposition to President Bush's war on Iraq. I felt that decision to invade and occupy an oil-rich Arab Muslim country that had nothing to do with 9/11 was going to be disaster for the United States, as well as certainly for the people of Iraq. That the decision to invade Iraq was going to precipitate feelings in the Middle East against the United States about invasions and occupations. And so I became one of only 3 federal employees that ended up resigning over the Iraq War. Subsequently, we found out that indeed the presentation that my boss at the time, Secretary of State Colin Powell, the evidence that he presented to the United Nations on the issue of weapons of mass destruction, it was not believed by the United Nations at that time, and in fact the UN did not vote for any sort of military operations in the name of the United Nations. And we found out subsequently through comments made by Colin Powell's Chief of Staff, Larry Wilkerson, that indeed there really was no evidence of any weapons of mass destruction. And so the rationale for the United States to have invaded and occupied Iraq, and now we have nearly, 13 years of military operations that have been going on in Iraq, and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Iraqis who have been killed. And now we see the creation of ISIS, which I think is a direct result of the U.S. occupation of Iraq. Now ISIS in Iraq and in Syria, and yet another country that has been destabilized, and by another U.S. administration, the Obama administration, which again has this idea that regime change is the responsibility of the United States of America, as what we've seen in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and Syria. And in none of those countries are things stable at all because of the U.S. intervention. So at this People's Tribunal on the Iraq War, I call upon other people who are in the U.S. government now to look really closely at what is going on and to have the courage of your convictions, that if you feel like you need to get out of the government, that you should, and then speak out on your concerns. Thank you.